Bill was the kind of the walking representative of we-making. And so when we think about this little word, this W-E, we is a way in which we collectively own our relationship to others. And that can be done in all kinds of ways. It means being empathetic. It means being compassionate. It means being willing to listen, not to judge. All of these are things that help us to become aware of the ways in which our bonds of connection are so similar. And so this is another mission that we can take on in support of democracy, is being active in our we-making. And so we take on we-making as a way in which we contribute to making us work of, by, and for the people.
Democracy has always been a part of the Christian journey. When I think about Scripture, when I think about democracy in the Scripture, I go all the way back to the book of Exodus and think about Moses when he went down to Pharaoh and told Pharaoh, "Let my people go." He realized that they were being treated wrongly. He realized they were being treated unjustly. And Moses went down to Pharaoh and said, "Pharaoh, this is not right. Let my people go." And of course, Moses is well known for his role in freeing the slaves there in Egypt and telling Pharaoh to let my people go. Moving forward to the New Testament, there's a passage in Matthew chapter 25 that talks about Jesus was sharing people about just being kind to people, being nice to people, making sure that people have their necessary needs. And he mentioned in Matthew 25, when I was naked, you clothed me. When I was hungry, you gave me food. When I was thirsty, you gave me water to drink. When I was in prison, you came to visit me. And they said, wait, Jesus, when were you naked and we gave you clothes? When were you thirsty and we gave you water? When were you in prison, we came to visit you? And Jesus looked at them and said, "As you've done it to the least of these, my brethren, you've done it unto me." That's Bill Roussell's story. He's always been there for people. He's always been there to try to make people better. He's always been there to make people's lives better. And he invested his life in people, particularly here in the city of New Orleans. And his legacy will always be, here's a man that believed in democracy, and not only believed in it, he put it into action all the days of his life.
We often talked about the history of the impact of the church had in the fight and on his personal life in keeping his spirit up when things got tough. He always said, we have to stay in prayer. We have to keep God in our heart. And we have to focus on those things which God has taught us and how we do things. He kept the movement at the forefront, but you never forgot about where God stood in that.
Without media to inform the public, democracy cannot exist. Horace Mann, the so-called father of public education in America, argued that universal public education was the best way to turn American children into judicious Republican citizens, people capable of staying informed enough to elect good leadership, people who could read newspapers and books and cast their votes accordingly. We use the word media in our time to group together all methods for disseminating information or, unfortunately, disinformation to the public. It is so essential to our democracy that it's considered the fourth estate of our republic. Credible media is as essential to our democracy as the legislative, executive, and judicial branches of government. And it provides us with the ability to judge all three. Moving forward, it's critically important that we support the media that we do have control over and encourage Congress and our elected officials to limit the monopolistic ownership of the media on which our democracy depends.
William Bill Roussell dedicated his life to democracy and the role it's played in media, both historically and aspirationally. And that dedication defines my relationship with Bill, who challenged me as a young reporter to always remember that my primary obligation to the people was to keep democracy at the forefront of the fight to expose injustice. As African Americans, historically, we are keenly attuned to the tenet of democracy, which protects us from the unwarranted governmental deprivation of the right to life, liberty, and minority rights. And Bill would challenge his commitment to democracy, perhaps from our ancestral giants like Frederick Douglass and Ida B. Wells. Frederick Douglass, the great orator, writer, and author, would publish the first issue of the North Star, an anti-slavery newspaper, on December 3rd, 1847. Bill, I think, would want us to create our own think tank among African American leaders to devise conversations and programs that would benefit the African American community, and especially young African Americans, to reconnect us with our history. The problem we're having now is basically that there has been a great disconnect between the old school and the millennials, and what we need is a continuum. And I think going forward, Bill would like to see us form a coalition that consists of old school and young school together.
Bill understood deeply that you cannot have a strong democracy without a strong public education system. Bill believed passionately that the purpose of public education is to transfer culture from one generation to the next. He thought that is the purpose of our schools. He would often say, you know, it's good to be able to read, it's good to be able to write, that's essential, of course. We need to know how to do all of these technical things. But equally important are these questions of, where's your heart? Where are you leading? Where are you going to? In other words, Bill was concerned not just with schooling, but he was concerned with education. In his final days, Bill emphasized the critical importance of protecting and strengthening our democracy on every front, including and perhaps especially education. Today, we face challenges that threaten the very core and foundation of our democracy, the very core and foundation of public education. Louisiana's Senate Bill 313, while presented as a means to increase educational choice through educational savings accounts, poses a real risk to potentially defunding public education in our state. And Project 2025's platform to eliminate the Department of Education would have dire consequences for our most vulnerable learners and would pose extreme challenges to our most revered Black educational institutions, including our HBCUs. And Bill recognized these dangers, and he worked right up until the end, mobilizing and convening and organizing others to fight. Let's demand equitable funding and quality schools that are truly accountable to our communities.
A democratic education provides students with choice, both individual and collective choice. In a true democracy, education includes systemic instruction about the principles of government, the institutions of government, and non-governmental institutions. And my question to you, my friends and colleagues, does our current education system provide those opportunities for all children in our community? As I quote the Reverend Otis Moss III, democracy is on the ballot, not just in 2024, but in every election. The question for each of us is, will we stand not for our children or for our grandchildren, but for our great-grandchildren? Because the choices we make or not make will have consequences for generations to come. Long live democracy.
What is this country gonna look like in the future if we keep acting like we're doing now? Bill was a legend in many ways. In his university time, he stood out, but he stood out in terms of how he carried himself in the university. You could find him in all the good spots of where things were happening and where it was good to have a Bill Roussel there. More importantly, he was a fixture for other people with whom he met to appreciate what it meant to be a man who was a man who knew what he could do, how he could do it, and it didn't take long to get to know him in a sense of having something to say. There's the old saying, you know, God gave you one mouth but two ears. You might better stand still and listen. He did that. I am grateful to be able to know that I knew him, saw somebody that was really, really a picture of what you would expect in the individual. His story is going to be told by people who saw him, but hopefully they will take what they saw and look like him in the future.
Those who know Bill know that being successful in business was just as important as being a social activist. Many people may think that there's a natural conflict in pursuing these ambitions. However, I believe that Bill understood what Martin Luther King meant by economic prosperity and the phrase, "A rising tide lifts all boats," and he certainly embraced it. I think Bill understood that business is crucial to economic growth and that economic growth and job creation is one of the foundations of a strong democracy, especially for those communities that have been underrepresented. Bill was a self-made man, but the values he lived by in growing and sustaining his own business are the same values that define our democracy, such as transparency, accountability, and good governance. By upholding these values, business promotes a culture of accountability and integrity, which is vital to a strong democratic society. When businesses strive, they create employment opportunities and reduce unemployment rates and improve the standards of living for individuals and families. Bill understood that businesses have the potential to be agents of positive change within their own communities when businesses operate responsibly and ethically. They can be powerful catalysts to a strong, prosperous, democratic society. This is part of the legacy he leaves for us to continue and embrace within our own respective lives and businesses.
Bill Roussel, who's a mentor and a friend and a brother, has helped me shape what I think of democracy, but also what I understand. In this country, democracy is truly an aspirational goal. We've not gotten there yet, and Bill Roussel understood that. He understood that it would take activism for us to reach that goal, that he may not be there with us when we get there, but we still had to get there. One of the things about democracy that we tend to forget, that even though it's a process of majority rule, it is also, if it's true democracy, it's a process that respects the rights of the minority. We live in a country that doesn't quite get it, that true democracy is truly inclusive of everybody. Activism has always been required in the struggle to reach the aspirational goal of democracy in this country, community organizing. But not community organizing of the uninformed, but community organizing that is both inclusive of the community, listens to the community, and understand that there's a wisdom in the community that we're attempting to organize. Bill and I have worked many, many years together. And one of the things I can truly say that he understood true democracy in any process that he and I worked together in. He made sure that true democracy, which is inclusive of everybody, even those that disagree, are not left out of the mix. I am continuing to struggle with the whole idea that I will miss a mentor and a guide, but I will never miss his spirit because it will always be with me to touch me on the shoulder, to let me know when it's time to activate the activism. Democracy is something that we must cherish as a goal, and we must work continuously to ensure that we get there.
Since my retirement from the Louisiana Supreme Court, we've gotten involved in some recent politics when Bill Roussel and Barbara Major invited me to join the New Orleans Citizens Committee. This was important work because the governor had refused the $70 million that was available to feed children over the summer. It's really obscene to leave money on the table when there's federal money available to feed children. Louisiana is one of the poorest states in the nation, and for conservative states to refuse to accept the money to feed children is just downright obscene. Bill Roussel was able to mobilize groups around the state, mobilize and involved in the political process, and we were able to reverse that decision. As a result of that, here in Louisiana, school children, poor kids in Louisiana were able to get food over the summer. This should not have been a situation where second harvesters and other folks were scrambling to feed kids. Moving forward, of course, we want to focus on one of the things that was near and dear to Bill Roussel's heart, and that was teaching young people about the democratic process and getting them to be more vested in the democratic process. Bill Roussel devoted his life to teaching young people about democracy, and certainly we want to get them involved, to get them registered to vote. Voting is the very foundation of our democracy. They've got to vote for mayor and local races. They've got to vote for governor. The last governor's race had a dismal turnout, and they certainly have got to show up and vote in terms of presidential elections and national elections. So I'm hoping that that will be his legacy, that we'll have more young people understand the importance of our democracy.
Bill understood that we who believe in freedom cannot rest until it's done. He understood that all of us have a responsibility all the time, not just some of the time, to be about taking care of others as well as those that we consider our beloveds and the ones that we care about. And it's the only way that democracy can be perfected, because in its creation, it was viewed as an imperfect effort.
In one of my last conversations with Bill, I got to thank him. So many lessons, working with him for the past 7 years in his capacity as my board member. And I got to thank him for some of those lessons, especially for teaching me that you never give up. Things may seem impossible. The problems and challenges may seem insurmountable, but you have to keep going. That's what I learned from Bill. This is the long game of democracy, and it's up to all of us to keep pushing. So to now my ancestor Bill, I want to say thank you again for your wisdom, your courage, your kindness, your humor, your honesty, your generosity, your love, and your unwavering commitment to our community. You showed us the way. Now it's up to us to carry the torch forward. We are so determined to make you proud.
William, you've been a great friend, mentor, advisor, and confidant. Thank you for everything. Love you, my dear brother.